I used your vocal to build a synth patch, like a pad.
Oh.
By the second chorus, we've earned this sort of like lush, warm thing. But then you wrote this bridge that was way more angular with changing time signatures and changing phrases. At this moment, it sort of felt like we need something to like jolt us from warm bath slumber kind of thing, which is where we get that line from. Let's hear it again.
I am the only drunk girl at the party. That afternoon crumbles into the...
At the time, I was listening to a lot of Toumani Diabaté, who's I think he's a Malian artist. Has this great album, Boulevard de l'Indépendance. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation. But like, it's all these like really bright and yet churning West African grooves that will be punctuated with these really angular melodic lines that like start and end in places that you don't expect them to, and go in directions that you don't expect them to. And so I think that was definitely a little bit in the back of my mind when this was coming together. And then it sets up this next section.
That afternoon crumbles into the night, singing a tune with someone else's bite. Late in the evening, no slaughtering, no blood. Levees are heaving, still waters want to
I wonder if we can hear this with the vocal, but without the drums, and just hear how all these parts interact.
That afternoon crumbles into the night, singing a tune with someone else's bite. Late in the evening, no slaughtering, no blood. Levees are heaving, still waters want to flood.
Yeah, so these gestures are being like passed off between the strings to the vibes to the clarinet to to the winds.
Crumbles into the night, singing a tune.
Yeah, it's like the strings have this tremolo thing, and then the vibes do this arpeggio up, and then the clarinet and flute kind of like capitalize on that with a little flutter.
To the night, singing a tune with someone else's bite. Late in the evening, no slaughtering, no blood. Levees are heaving, still waters want to flood. Do you want to?
And then we get into this whole flood thing. So this was really the section that was most changed. Do you want to talk about what inspired you to like rip up part of this song and find something new with it?
Well, I just was never super satisfied with the third verse and bridge. And I spent, after we had, recorded this and performed it a bunch, I spent some time just rethinking it. And I wanted to bring back in the first two verses, right? Late afternoon. I wanted to go back to that because in a looping song, it's the same thing over and over. And I'm always thinking like, well, how can it be different? How can we subvert expectations? Where do we think it's going? Can we let it go there and then go somewhere completely different? But then the trap of that can be like, are we always just going somewhere, and like when can we return to something familiar? So part of that was I wanted to return to something that we'd already heard, transport it, and see what was new about it, new in the storytelling, which is what, we changed the meter a little bit, to return to something familiar, but you're hearing it in an unfamiliar way. That flood line was not in there originally, but I thought that I really liked it. Still waters want to flood. That's the song. It's just, we're just sitting here, but they want to just break the levee. And so that became this layering of the floods. Now, because of the restrictions of the way it was recorded, we had to find an interesting way to make that flood section happen, which we cannot do live because of the restrictions of the loop. But how fun that we got to record it in this way.
How do you deal with it live?
I layer the phrase "want to flood" several times, but it's all it's all with the same meter.
It's
all
square
this-
phrases.
It's square phrases, exactly. And this one, it's much more random.
Yeah. Whereas in the first couple verses, the phrases are even 2 bars, 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever. In this third verse, you kind of interrupt yourself. The drums are kind of eliding underneath your phrases. The vocal starts to drift out of sync with the drums, but then we have the winds and the bass that kind of punctuate the vocal.
That afternoon crumbles into the night. Singing at
2, 3.
where someone else is by. Late in the evening, no slaughter break.
So you're
no
actually singing
blood.
in phrases of like
Levi's
7 beats there,
Still waters want
but
to
the
flow.
other elements aren't necessarily following it. And in addition, something that really strikes me as different about this verse is that we spoke about how the kernel of the song is very pentatonic. Da 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 da, right? Mi, re, do, la, do, so. But then in this verse, you start adding other notes. Da 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 da. So that's like the sharp fourth. When we get into the floods, 1, 2, flood. That's the sharp fourth. It's almost like you're returning to the familiar scenes that you've established early on, but there's like very different colors, very different elements that you've drawn into them.
1, 2, fly. 1, 2, fly.
And we've got a couple things going on there. We've got your vocals, but then also I used your vocal to build a synth patch, like a pad.
Wow.
So this sound is all sourced from when you were singing 1, 2, flood, 1, 2, flood. And it looks like I reversed them first.
Oh.
And then used that as the source audio. So that we play melodies or chords or whatever. From Grace McLean's voice. And then was able to use that to create sounds that are of your voice, like we were just talking about. Like you take it and you turn it over and then it becomes something else, but it retains characteristics of the original thing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's this next section.
Do you want to know a secret? I tell you better keep it. I didn't ask, you didn't answer. This will not last, you necromancer. Lionesses
Yeah, I love that section.
Yeah, we sort of like fully enter that gauzy landscape. We are fully in it. Where's the ground? I don't know. We're in a flood. Then this, I didn't ask, you didn't answer, is a like, oh no, there is the ground and I am standing on it. And the reality is like, that's gauze and this is ground. And yeah, I like that we go from getting to the most sort of like, ooh, really living in the question to just a real quiet little hello reality. hello reality, before we launch back into waves of desire that'll carry us through the end.
We're coming from the richer harmonic thing, the Lydian thing, the sharp 4, whatever, and then then your melody comes right back to the pentatonic world. 1, 2, 3, 5, and it's ascending and repetitive.
Do you want to know a secret?
And meanwhile, the strings have gone from this like tremolo thing that we have back here, right? Into the strings are descending instead of ascending, and it's like real, like kind of sweet.
Do you want to know a secret? I tell you better keep it.
And then we go right back to this
I didn't ask, you
this necromancer thing, very percussive.
didn't answer. This will not last, you necromancer. Lionesses are
in the past, you'd highlighted that necromancer line to me.
Yeah, I mean, initially in this section, there had been some more lyrics pointing to, I think, what the intention of that word was, which is to love something that is dead or that is not alive, that is not in existence, which is the singer's accusation to her intended, because the desire is like not actually coming to fulfillment. I never get to be reckless in this song. I want to be reckless. And there's a like wall. This is an expression of things that are like, ooh, I'm behind that wall. Right? That's the whole song. But the hope or the wish of the recklessness is like a kind of, yes, freedom, but like a kind of life outside of this. And so the necromancer is like, yeah, but there's a wall. All we're talking about right now is just, it's not actually real.